Welcome, everybody. I am going to present our oral defense that is called The Impact of Gamification on High Frequency Vocabulary Acquisition in a Virtual Learning Environment on the Fuerzas Aeroespaciales Colombianas. This oral defense is presented by Anyelo Roa, and who is speaking, Angela Marcela Castillo. This is a research project that is done as a qualitative action research in grounded theory. Our keywords are gamification, meaningful learning, high frequency vocabulary, virtual learning, and action research. To state the problem first, this project is done in the setting of Fuerzas Aeroespaciales de Colombia, and this involves three young students at a beginner level of English, being this A2 level, and these virtual classes are held through Microsoft Teams. These classes are voluntary and these classes are done to improve communication skills in the students. And so this starts giving us some pointers to our statement of the problem because the problem arises due to a constant interruption in pedagogical sequences resulting in learning gaps in the students. This means that as the class is voluntary, students do not attend at a consistent pace. Sometimes they go, sometimes if they are too busy, they just won't go. And this results in our students in having difficulties when remembering the topics that they had previously seen because they often forget what they learned like a week or two ago, and we have to go back to the topic, and that's how we cannot make progress. So it is required to find a pedagogical strategy that addresses with efficiency how to present a content that can be readily recalled by students even in this low exposure teaching content. It means that we still need to make progress with these students. However, they do not have more time to address, to attend the classes. So this is why the idea of this research is to find a more effective tool, like a strategy that needs to be paired with the content that should be central to improve the communicative skills of our beginner students in the classroom. So, this research focuses on those pedagogical tools that we need to improve the efficiency of the teacher with the few time and the interrupted time he's going to get. So, this research seeks to identify if gamification can be an adequate pedagogical resource to create students' motivation, as well as helping them easily recall the content previously seen. So, our general objective is to analyze how gamification influences the acquisitions and retention of high frequency vocabulary in adult students with an A1, A2 level of English belonging to the FAC who participate in virtual classes in order to improve their current level of English. As specific objectives, we have described students' behavior within these virtual spaces to identify factors that impact attendance and learning process. Second, to examine students' opinions on the use of gamified materials in vocabulary learning. Third, describe how gamification combined with meaningful learning contributes to vocabulary retention in a context where exposure to the second language is limited. And fourth, interpret the results obtained through field notes, observations, surveys, and exams to understand the impact of the implemented strategies. So, the literature review. We review five different groups of literature. First, we are going to see that we got our fundamental educational theory. This is our center, our pillar of how we are going to approach this problem. Then we review international contents, national context, or as well to see the what has been done in Colombia, and finally local context in which we focus in the city of Bogota, as well as reviews of methodological and pedagogical content as well to decide how to conduct this research. I am going to present now which are the most important findings in our literature review. So, As I was speaking, our foundational educational theory, we are going with the author David Oswell in the meaningful learning. And we talk about meaningful learning because this is going to be the theory that is going to help us really focus our pedagogical efforts into helping getting our students the more learning out of their time. So Oswald says that learning happens when new information is not arbitrary but related to previous learning. So in this case, this means for us that we need to make the learning of new vocabulary in English not arbitrary, but actually related to what they have learned before. So this is one thing that we have to change because our students were learning their vocabulary by lists of words. So this is very arbitrary and is not related to whatever they have been doing. So it has to be changed. Also, avoid rote learning, meaning arbitrary information that is easily forgotten. So, this is another thing that we really had to change because, as I just said, our students were learning their vocabulary by just by memory, and they were not relating these words in any context when they were learning them. And that's why, after 1 or 2 weeks of working with them, they will easily forgotten these words. So this is one thing that, according to David Asbell, we have to see how to change. And how are we going to change this? So we were thinking about gamification, and in doing so, I am going to show like 30 different researches that we followed that are especially meaningful for us. So in the case of the international context, we have Hasram, Siafikya, Inasir, and they use gamification to improve vocabulary retention. So that means that they use interactive and visual help to help the students memorize and maintain their attentions, because before they were learning their vocabulary in English using textbooks. And so they say that these interactive and visual help really help the students to memorize more words in English versus using textbooks. And they explain that big part of this happened because the learning happened to be very self-directed. So that's one important clue for us and our research. Another one is what Agudelo Escalante says: use of digital platforms enhances success rate and motivation in vocabulary activities. So this is that they say that it was very important to use gamification to break the monotony of learning and for the students to assimilate faster the information. And also because the students get to interact and engage. So in here we're seeing how those attributes of gamification, that is interaction and engagement, are the key for this national research for the students to memorize the vocabulary. And also, it's important to see that this national research is also developing in second language learning and in especially memory of new vocabulary, as we are. Finally, we have Valencia Silva and Velázquez Montenegro, which they say that the desire to learn after using gamification was improved. This research was done during COVID, and they started using platforms like Kahoot, Genially, and interactive tools for students to want to learn instead just to have to do it. And it says that the biggest gains came from the reduced fear of making mistakes that the students had from these platforms, and also the motivation for participating. So these are the biggest pointers that we had for starting to design our own research. And now we are going to see the methodology we use in it. And in here, I'm just mentioning Castiblanco and Vizcaíno and Uwe Flick because they gave us the theoretical frame for qualitative research and grounded theory and the necessity to use triangulation to validate data. But now I'm leaving you with my partner, Anyelo Roa, who's going to explain best this part.
Hello, tutorial classmates. My name is Anyelo Roa, and I'm going to continue with the presentation of our research project. So, talking about methodology and ethical considerations, we developed this study under a qualitative approach because our interest was not to measure results in numbers but to understand how gamification could impact in vocabulary acquisition in a real context. The population select were some students, three students to be specific, from Colombian Air Space Force, so most of them had A1, A2 English level. The population consists of young adults who required to take the exam named ALCPT, so it is necessary to strengthen their reading and listening skills. To collect the data, we use field journals, observations, surveys, and exams, which allow us to triangulate the information to obtain a more complete view of students' experience. Regarding the ethical considerations, we at the beginning of the intervention we explain them, our proposes, our objectives regarding the study, so they knew it, and also the participation in these sessions and in the study were voluntary. Yes, and it is very important that we use this information only for academic purpose. Regarding data analysis process, we select the method of qualitative content analysis and we use the software Atlas AI. This method and this tool we chose it because it allowed us to organize, code, and categorize information, linking findings with objective and theoretical framework. The process that we followed were that first we organized the initial categories related to motivation, participation, vocabulary retention, and technological limitations. Then we applied an open coding process identifying some key concepts of phrases in the field journals and surveys. Then we did an actual coding, connected some categories to understand how gamification relate to mindful learning. Yes, and finally we interpreted all the data regarding the key findings. Yes, the results that we identified consist that gamification increase extrinsic motivation. Yeah, so the students participate more in the virtual sessions, and also it was evident that they were able to integrate new vocabulary with prior knowledge. So they built a new solid knowledge. Yes, this confirmed the theory of mindful learning of Ausbels. So this analysis allow us to find some thematic categories. So in this case, that gamification is an important factor to overcome irregular attendance. Yes, this environment, the gamification promotes an environment in which the retention of high frequency vocabulary it's better. They learn better, and also with this in this context, we had some internet or technological problems, and also we find a risk of distraction. So it's very important that the games, the materials, focus or relate to the pedagogical objectives. So these categories allow us to understand more deeply how gamification impacts in learning in virtual contexts. So the discussion, the findings, with the findings we can confirm that gamification is an effective strategy to motivate students. and also it promotes the vocabulary retention despite the attendance were irregular, and also the time that we applied the activities were in a short period. Also, it is very important to take into account that or be careful that to prevent the strat. Yes, we must focus the activities with the objectives. So also the Oswald's theory promotes that students integrate new vocabulary with prior knowledge. So they build more solid learning. And in conclusion, we consider that the results allow us to answer to the proposed questions. So in general, we could consider that gamification promote or increase memorization of high frequency vocabulary, yes, in a short period, and also it promotes a pedagogical proposal that can be replayed in similar contexts. So teachers can face low language sports and irregular attendance with these kind of strategies. Talking about the implications for ELT limitation and future research, it is very important that to consider that gamification can become a powerful tool to motivate students and strengthen vocabulary. Yes. Also, the limits that we found in this context were that the attendance were in a irregular. Uh, we had some connective problems, and uh, the students were in an environment where the exposure of the language was limited. Regarding the future research, yes, it is recommended to expand the study with higher levels of English, yes, to compare gamification with other active methodologies such as project based learning, and explore technologies like virtual reality. Yes, and that's all. Here we have our reference, and I have finished with this presentation. So thank you so much for your attention. Bye bye.